Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Sports Universe. As I had mentioned before, I'm going to give a NBA season preview and awards predictions. So to start off, I'm going to talk about the Eastern Conference, and I'm going to give each divisions and their respective records from last year. So to start off with the Atlantic Division, the Boston Celtics finished in first place with a 53-29 record, followed by the Toronto Raptors at 51-33. Then the New York Knicks came in at 31-51, followed by Philadelphia 76ers at 28-54. And to round out the Atlantic Division were the Brooklyn Nets at 20-62. The Central Division included the Cleveland Cavaliers at 51-31, the Milwaukee Bucks at 42-40, Indiana Pacers at 42-40, Chicago Bulls at 41-41, and the Detroit Pistons at 37-45. And to round out the Eastern Conference was the Southeast Division, starting with Washington Wizards at 49-33, the Atlanta Hawks at 43-39, Miami Heat at 41-41, the Charlotte Hornets at 36-46, and the Orlando Magic at 29-53. So some key acquisitions that occurred in the Eastern Conference this year were Gordon Hayward signing with the Boston Celtics in the offseason. Unfortunately, he he snapped his leg in half on opening day, and that puts a big blow into their NBA Finals hopes this year. Another big move was Kyrie Irving being traded from Cleveland to Boston, for Isaiah Thomas, Jay Crowder, and a pick. This trade shapes up the entire Eastern Conference. Boston went from being a little notch below Cleveland to, I believe, at the same level as Cleveland until the Gordon Hayward injury. That is. Dwayne Wade was bought out by the Chicago Bulls, and he signed with the Cleveland Cavaliers to play with his good friend LeBron James. Jay Crowder was, as I mentioned before, traded from Boston to Cleveland as part of the Kyrie Irving trade. Paul Millsap leaves Atlanta and signs with Denver, which is a big move out there in the Western Conference. Paul George was traded from Indiana to Oklahoma City, another big move out in the Western Conference. And the Chicago Bulls were able to dump the contracts of Dwayne Wade, Rajon Rondo, Taj Gibson, and Jimmy Butler. Based off of acquisitions and moves that were made in the offseason and previous teams' histories of winning franchises and a winning culture, my playoff seedings for this season may surprise some people, but in reality, I think that some people's viewpoints and opinions are very one-sided because they don't understand the long haul of an 82 game season. They kind of just skip the regular season and immediately go to the inevitable Cavs versus Warriors finals, which, man, I don't blame them. It's terrible because super teams are taking over the NBA, and it's just not good for ratings and such during the regular season. The NBA loses a lot of money. So to start off the Eastern Conference for this year, I'm predicting the Cleveland Cavaliers to come in at first with somewhere around, I'd say, 57, probably around 57 wins. Anytime you have LeBron James in your team, you're going to have a shot at the NBA Finals. And you add pieces as in Isaiah Thomas, who isn't that much worse of a replacement than Kyrie Irving. He's just nursing a hip injury right now. He'll be back sometime around the All-Star break. You add a 3-and-D player in Jay Crowder. You still have Kevin Love. You add an aging Dwayne Wade who can still score the basketball last year. He proved that. He was averaging close to 20 points a game. You still have J.R. Smith. You have Iman Shumpert. You have the likes of proven NBA players that can consistently perform on a daily basis. Coming in at number 2, I have the Toronto Raptors. Kyle Lowry, DeMar DeRozan, Serge Ibaka is the core there. They're always a consistent team around, I'd say, 45 wins to 50 wins. maybe even a little more depending on if they can all stay healthy. Lowry and Ibaka have a history of having nagging injuries all year. DeRozan is usually pretty solid and healthy usually all the time. Jonas Valanciunas has a nice force on defense and his presence inside. So they have a solid core there. Expect them to come in somewhere near the top of the Eastern Conference. Number 3, I have the Milwaukee Bucks. The rise of Giannis Antetokounmpo is taking over the NBA. He's challenging LeBron James and Kevin Durant as top players in the league. He is a freak. That's why they call him the Greek Freak. He is 6'11". He plays point guard and anything I've ever seen. So far through the first 4 games, he's averaging 36 points, over 10 rebounds, and over 5 assists. He is solidifying himself as an MVP candidate. I expect him to carry the Bucks to a top 3 seed this year in the Eastern Conference. But it's not just Giannis. It's not just the Greek Freak. He has Malcolm Brogdon, last year's Rookie of the Year. Chris Middleton, a great 3-point shooter. Greg Monroe, good off the bench. Thon Maker, who's developing. John Henson, who's a force on the defensive end. He has other pieces around him that are going to be able to push him to the next level. Coming in at number 4, I have the Boston Celtics. The Celtics would have been a top 2 seed for me if it wasn't for the Gordon Hayward injury. I had done predictions a while ago and had them in the top 2 seeds, but I tweaked them a little bit, kind of cheating after the Gordon Hayward injury happened. So I have them number 4. Al Horford, Kyrie Irving. I think Terry Rozier and Marcus Smart are going to come into their own this year. Jason Tatum's going to have a great year. Jaylen Brown. They have a nice young core there in Boston. So I think that if it doesn't happen this year, they're definitely set for the future. Kyrie said he wanted to be the man. Said he wanted to play LeBron out of his shadow. He's got his chance now. Gordon Hayward is hurt. Al Horford isn't as much of a scoring threat as he used to be. So if Kyrie doesn't take over and be the scorer and player he thinks he can be, then it raises the question if you ever will be. Coming in number 5, which me personally, I think number 5 for them in the Eastern Conference is a scary seed, is the Washington Wizards. John Wall and Bradley Beal are out to prove something this year. They feel like they are slighted by the media and by critics. They think that they are the best backcourt in the league. All they hear about is Thompson and Curry, McCollum and Lillard, all these other backcourts around the league. And they think they have a chip on their shoulder. Anytime John Wall is going to be playing on national television this year, tune in, because he's gonna have a point to prove. And they got Marcin Gortat inside, Otto Porter on the wing, nice 3-and-D kind of guy, max contract, so he better live up to the hype. And I think they'll be very competitive in all the series they're in the playoffs. I actually have them going to the Eastern Conference Finals and challenging the Cavs. And expect them to make some noise this year. I think they're going to be a solid ball club, around 45 to 50 wins. Number 6, I have the Miami Heat. The Heat, when you look at their roster, it really doesn't blow you away. But they have the guys that are consistent enough and good enough to put you over the top. Not over the top, but put you over the top in the Eastern Conference, I'd say. So, Goran Dragic, Dion Waiters, who I really love at the 2-guard. You have the Hassan Whiteside, who is an animal inside. And you draft Bam Adebayo from Kentucky. I think towards the end of the season, middle half of the year, he'll start to get in the mix. Expect them to be challenging for a top 5 seed, but I think they'll just miss out and get 6. And at 7 and 8, I have the Charlotte Hornets and the Philadelphia 76ers. The Hornets signed Dwight Howard in the offseason. They have Kemba Walker, Nick Batum, who is actually out right now, 8 to 12 weeks with an elbow injury. When he comes back, he'll add a nice spark. I think they'll be around 40 wins, maybe right around 500, but since the Eastern Conference is so weak, I think they'll be able to sneak in. Then rounding out, you got the 76ers, Embiid, Simmons, Fultz, nice young core. I think that they're going to make some noise and let the league know that they're here for the future and that they're going to be a force to reckon with within the next 5 years. So for the Western Conference, I'm gonna just skip right to my seedings, and I'm gonna go number one, as everybody knows, is going to be the Warriors. I actually think that they might challenge their win record from a couple years ago, and be even better than that people think. Curry, Thompson, Draymond. I'm leaving out Durant, the most important piece, because it's just absurd to me that they have all four of those guys on one floor on one team at the same time. So they're locked for my number one seed. At number two, I actually have the Oklahoma City Thunder coming in, the new big three in Oklahoma City. Forget the Durant, Westbrook, Harden big three. You now have Carmelo Anthony, Paul George, and Russell Westbrook, which I think is honestly one of the scariest offensive big threes I've ever seen. And they're going to put up numbers that the NBA hasn't seen in a long, long time. Westbrook being able to attack the rim and actually have people to kick it out for the wing now that can knock down outside shots is going to be a game changer. The only thing that I think they're going to lack is not lack. I think they're still going to have a great defensive team. I think Carmelo Anthony is going to weigh them down a little bit on the defensive end. I mean, Paul George is always in consideration for an All-NBA defensive team. Russell Westbrook is as well. Andre Roberson, first team All-Defense last year. Steven Adams is a force in the middle. But the communication factor between them and Carmelo is just not going to be there. So that's why I don't think they're going to be able to get over the top and eventually beat the Warriors. Number three, I have the Spurs. Greg Popovich, top 5 coach of all time. You have Kawhi Leonard, LaMarcus Aldridge, Danny Green. He can shoot the lights out from three still. So they're always going to be solid up there to the top of the Western Conference and be consistent and challenge the top teams. But I don't think they have enough firepower to overthrow either Oklahoma City or Golden State. Coming in at number 4, I have the Houston Rockets with James Harden and Chris Paul. I'm actually interested to see how that's going to work out. They're both two volume guys who always want the ball in their hands. So we'll see how interesting that is. Number 5 is my most interesting team in the West, which would be the Minnesota Timberwolves. Karl-Anthony Towns, Jimmy Butler, Andrew Wiggins, Jeff Teague, Taj Gibson. It's probably one of the best starting fives on paper in the league. So we'll see how they can gel together. I have them coming in at number 5. Los Angeles Clippers got rid of Chris Paul. He wanted out. They let him have what he wanted. But they did very well. Jerry West is now in the front office. They did very well in the offseason, piecing together a new playoff caliber team. They re-signed Blake Griffin. They signed Danilo Gallinari. They signed European sensation Milos Teodosic, who is considered one of the greatest passers in the league already, and he's played in 2 games. Patrick Beverley is a pest on the defensive end for him. DeAndre Jordan is still there in the presence inside. So I expect them to have a solid season. At 7, I got the Denver Nuggets. I think Nikola Jokic and Paul Millsap are going to be a great force inside. You have Gary Harris on the outside as well as Jamal Murray, 2 young guards. Still have Kenneth Faried coming off the bench, Wilson Chandler. I think they're going to be a solid 7 seed and going to challenge teams in the playoffs, especially if they play Oklahoma City. I think that'll be a very competitive series. And at number 8, I got coming in, it was a toss-up I had between the Portland Trailblazers and the New Orleans Pelicans, and I ultimately gave it to the New Orleans Pelicans just because I think that Rajon Rondo and DeMarcus Cousins are going to work perfectly together. Rondo never wants the ball, never wants to score. Cousins wants it. You still have Anthony Davis, Drew Holiday. You added some nice pieces in Ian Clark on the wing, Dante Cunningham. So I think they got a solid enough roster around Anthony Davis and Cousins that they're going to be able to get over the hump and just barely sneak into the playoffs. My Eastern Conference and Western Conference predictions is going to be Cavs versus Wizards and Warriors versus Thunder. I got the Cavs in 6, and I have the Warriors in 6. And a finals rematch, I have Cavs versus Warriors, and I'm going to go with the Warriors in 6. the firepower in the Warriors is just going to be too much for any team this year to handle. They're just too good to not win the championship this year. Their roster is too complete. Expect them to be around for a lot longer. And to round out my NBA preview, I'm going to do a little awards predictions. For my coach of the year, I'm going to go with Erik Spoelstra of the Heat. I think he's an outstanding coach with the team he has this year. I think that he's gonna raise some eyebrows with the records and with their performance. I think that he's going to get recognized. Comeback player of the year, I have Reggie Jackson of the Pistons. After a down year last year with such high expectations for the Pistons and Reggie Jackson, I think that he's going to come back into his own and be once again a volume scorer as well as a distributor. Sixth man of the year, Eric Gordon, shooter on the Houston Rockets. Chris Paul and James Harden are going to find him on the wing no matter what time of the game it is, no matter what day of the week it is. He's going to be shooting the lights out from three. Expect him to average somewhere between 15 and 18 points off the bench, which I think will be good enough because the Rockets will be a contender. It'll be a good enough team for him to get recognition. Most improved player of the year, I have D'Angelo Russell of the Brooklyn Nets. I think all he needed was a change of scenery. Los Angeles wasn't doing it for him. I think now that he's in Brooklyn and he's quote unquote the man, he'll change it around, and I think he'll average somewhere in the average of 20 to 25 points, and which is a huge jump from his season last year. Defensive player of the year, I have Anthony Davis. I think that he is one of the greatest defenders we've seen in a while. I mean, it was hard for me to pick Davis over Kawhi Leonard just because I think that Kawhi Leonard should win Defensive Player of the Year every year that he's in the league. But I went with Davis. Rookie of the Year, I'm going to go with Ben Simmons of the 76ers. I think he's going to average close to a triple-double and lead into an 8 seed. And most importantly, for the MVP, I have it going to Giannis Antetokounmpo. I think he's going to average somewhere near or at 30 points a game, as well as average over 10 rebounds and close to 7 assists. He's going to lead the Bucks to a top 3 seed, and he's going to change the culture of the NBA as we know it. That wraps up my NBA portion of this show. Stay tuned for my Week 8 NFL predictions.